Hello, everybody. I'm Brandon Harmon, and my novel presentation is over Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. He was the only born son and child of Thomas and Margaret Stevenson. Now, he was a sickly child that spent most of his time making up stories. And when he was young, he actually won an essay competition, a story competition, by dictating his work to his mother, who wrote and submitted it for him. Now, Thomas was a wealthy civil engineer, his father, and wanted his son to do the same, as most fathers do, especially in that time period. Now, he told his father that he would like to be a writer. He didn't really want to be a civil engineer. And his father, disappointed, kind of urged him to study law so he had something to fall back on because he knew it had English in it and he thought it was a good middle ground. Robert obliged, but I don't think he did much of the work in law, but he did study. Now, this is him by Count Girolamo Nerli. I always think it's so interesting as the people he depicts in his work, especially the pirates in the first one, it's the mustache. It looks similar to him. To continue on, this is more when he's a young adult making his own decisions. Robert visited Grez, France, where he fell in love with an American woman that was 10 years older than him. Now, this in and of itself isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just this woman, Fanny Osborne, she was married to an American man and had 2 children. She lived in America. Now, he chased her back to America and waited there until they could marry. The divorce finalized, they took the kids, and he wanted to take them back to Scotland, Edinburgh, where he's from. I believe he wanted to reprimand with his parents after kind of running off with an American woman and not being a liar. But the cold weather caused him to not be able to withstand it. He started to suffer. So he goes to Switzerland, where Fanny had her son in boarding school. It is noted that here in Switzerland, he finishes his first work, Treasure Island. It is also important that Treasure Island is largely influenced by Fanny's son, his stepson at the time, I believe he drew the map of the Treasure Island, which is shown in at least my copy of the novel, and I couldn't find one that matched online. Wish there was a way had a way to scan it so I could show you. And I believe he told him stories at night, and he decided to write them down so he could have one grandiose story to tell him over multiple nights. Here's a brief synopsis of the story in question. Treasure Island is a story about a young boy, Jim Hawkins. Jim's family owns an inn. One day, a man addressed as captain arrives to stay at the inn. The captain is being hunted for his treasure, the dead man's chest. Now, Jim's father passes away after falling ill, and men come to hunt down Captain, whom had also passed away shortly after Jim's father. Jim's mother takes the gold from the chest that Captain left, but only what is owed to her, no more, no less. Now, Jim takes a little parcel, a package of papers. These papers give Jim a map of where most of the treasure Captain knew about was hidden. They gather a crew to search for it, and off they go to Treasure Island. Here are the main character. The book itself has a list of characters and the description. Jim Hawkins, the boy who tells the story. Jim's mother, Billy Bones, a pirate called the Captain. Dr. Livesey and Squire Trelawney, Jim's friends who go with him to Treasure Island. Black Dog, a strange visitor. Pew, the blind man. Long John Silver, the one-legged pirate. Note that Black Dog, Pew, and Long John Silver are all a part of the crew. I believe it was Captain Flint's crew that Billy Bones was a part of. Captain Smollett, the captain of the Hispaniola. Ben Gunn, the man on Treasure Island, and the sailors on the Hispaniola. Arrow, Israel Hands, Red Ruth, Hunter, Joyce, and Gray. some themes for the novel. It's a coming of age novel as Jim matures throughout it. He is quite young. I don't believe we're giving an exact age. Now, he matures in some ways that are uncharacteristic of the theme. He murders someone, and I feel like that's an odd way to kind of show someone's growth. When after, I mean, he had seen his father and Captain Dine, even Pew was ran over by horses. The book never really withheld that idea, but the fact that he does it with his own hands at one point and with not too much regret is new. Greed, it's shown in his mother the kind of the opposite side of greed, how she only takes what's needy, but the pirates always want a bigger cut or they want that bigger bounty. Thus, they have that ambitious greed about them that kind of devours them. The good and the bad, very similar with greed. Greed has a part to do in who is good and who is bad. Mother would be an idea of a good character, and then bad would be Long John Silver, the idea of a bad character with a lot of greed or nasty tendencies. Deception, the pirates deceive the crew with like Jim and Captain Smollett, Dr. Livesey, and Trelawney. There are a few good pirates, though, I will say. Courage, a lot of the acts Jim does. I mean, hey, even leaving your home at whatever age to go hunt a treasure takes quite a bit of courage. I have a list of quotes that I wish to discuss. I'll read them and I'll discuss why they're important to the novel as a whole. As Captain talked and tried to convince me how badly he needed this rum, his voice grew louder. I was thinking only of my father, who needed quiet, and I agreed to get him the rum if he would be still. At this point, up until this point, I had imagined Jim liked Captain more so than his father, because there's no scene with Jim's father. Only the mention of him. But here he's kind of saying that he likes his father more. Understandable, but it's not shown. Also, it doesn't show Jim crying when his father dies, but when Captain does, he does. And he says, I've never liked the man so much. Or he didn't like the man at all, really. Maybe a narrator error there, as Jim is telling the story. Here, my curiosity was greater than my fear. This shows the courage from earlier. This is when the pirates were ransacking the inn looking for the dead man's chest, and Pew just wanted the parcel that Jim picked up. Didn't care too much about the gold, which some of it was taken by the mother, but I don't think that had an overall effect on how much there was. In the grand scheme to the pirates, at least. I thought this was interesting, kind of almost ironic. Jim said that although I'd lived by the shore all my life, it seemed I'd never been near the sea till then. This is when they're planning to board their ship. Now, Jim has serviced pirates and travelers all his life, and he's heard stories of the sea. But I find it odd that he makes a distinction between the shore and the sea. Because I guess near would be the fact that he's going out to it. Because when you're on the shore, you're not truly near the sea with all the stories he's heard. A little bit of food for thought. This is Captain Smollett when he's discussing his men. He's the captain of the Hispaniola, and he has a keen eye, as we'll see. Arrow was the first mate. He drinks a bit too much, and he mixes too freely with the men. Foreboding. All the captain said made sense, but an air of foreboding about it. Now in chapter 10, no one was very surprised nor very sorry when one night during a rough sea, Arrow disappeared entirely and was never seen again. That's all it says of Arrow, truly. He's never really mentioned again, but I find it odd, the complacency that's left when someone disappears. The first mate, nonetheless, not to mention he was unliked, but still, they don't care all too much. Also, in chapter 10, Captain Flint, it's Long John Silver's talking bird. Pieces of 8, pieces of 8. It's a reference to the treasure on Treasure Island. And I think this is kind of the first bit of insight you see into Long John Silver's intentions. Now, this is when we truly see it. Jim hides in an apple barrel because he was interested in it. And Long John talks to Israel Hands. As my friend Billy Bones would say, dead men don't bite. He's talking about mutineering and taking the treasure for themselves. Billy Bones also is the captain that died in the earlier chapters. Now, when the Captain Smollett brings out the map that Jim brought, but he had copied it, and the little marks of where the treasure was no longer there. Long John memorized the map and was disappointed. Jim saw this, but he changed quickly, and here's him noting it. Long John acted so cool and collected that I could not help feeling amazed at this ability to hide his true feelings. Now, this is when Jim hops onto a small boat to travel to the island. Note that not the captain, not Dr. Livesay or Squire, any of his real friends were there. He jumped onto with the pirates. And even Long John yelled at him like, hey, get back here, as he was on a different boat. And at this point, he's going to the very thing he's most desired, and he says, I hated the very thought of stepping foot on that island. Kind of maturing. It's not what it's made out to be. Mutiny was in the air. At this point, yes. I saw the monster. John Silver put his hat upon his head as if nothing had happened, and then he simply cleaned his knife and put it away. For context, he killed 2 men, just because they wouldn't go along with his plan. He didn't want the enemies to have more allies, I guess, but the swiftness and just it happens and not too much is thought about it. Now this is after they kind of make a stockade with Dr. Livesay Squire. They make it to the island, and they believe there's going to be an attack. If we had been allowed to sit idle, we would have become bored and unhappy, but Captain Smollett was too smart to let that happen. And he's set on watch on, I think they call it sentry, which is interesting because Billy Bones had him on watch. He'd pay him a silver coin each month to look for Long John. Interestingly, he's looking for the same guy in both scenarios. It's just he doesn't really know that. I began to envy the doctor walking in the cool woods with the birds and the smell of pine, while I sat grilling with my clothes stuck to me and the smell of death and dying all around. Great imagery in this. I just think it's very important to point that out. Here are a list of his other major works. Perhaps I should have put that in the title of the slide. But Treasure Island, it was published in 1883. Note, when he finished it in Switzerland with the Sun, it was 1881. Then we have A Child's Garden of Verses, 1885. Kidnapped in 1886, which I believe I had read before and I did not know it was him. And then The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which most people know. That is all I have. These are the 2 articles I used for most of it. I thank you for your time, and good evening.